Thank you for sharing. I also really like the color blue. So someone could share about another person. Ooh, Pack, you look like you're ready.
Um, yeah, I think John had like this very circular type of story where it's like it starts off with joy, and then it goes to hurt, pain, disappointment, all of those, and then it returns back to love, and then back to joy, and then I think that's a I think that's very um, reflective of like how our life usually starts off with, where it's like as a kid, right, world is great. It's like all the joys in life with like none of the responsibilities, none of the pain, none of the knowledge, right? And then uh, I think like all of us have met God through our pain, and then out of meeting God comes our joy. And I think that I was reminded by John's story.
Whoa, that was great. That was great. Awesome. Well, I heard God in every one of your autobiography. That was crazy. Wait, okay. So next is so as you guys shared your story, your story is also like telling God's story. So there's a scriptural basis for this framework and this way to engage. This is another tool we can use to engage in spiritual conversation. First one is to build trust based on a common interest and value. So that could be with coworkers, friends from volleyball, pickleball, high school friends, or college friends. So you already have that foundation and that trust built in your community, and that they already know your character. So you could start off from there, or you could continue to build and start building that relationship with that person. Or next step is affirm what you can of their spiritual beliefs or practices. So acknowledge what they believe in and the practice they're already practicing. And we want to be listeners of their stories. So we're not just, trying to sell or just trying to, like, we're listening to how they are practicing and what they believe in. And then we can also challenge whatever is replacing God in their lives. So it could be also it could be, success, it could be achievement, it could be fame, it could be money, it could be anything. Because people have different, putting replacing God with different things, and then ask questions and to probe why they're putting that thing first. Um, and for myself, I think God has also challenged that in me, what's replacing God in my life. And before, I always thought I wanted control of my own life, and I just want to drive my own wheel in my own car. And then, or like, how media and marketing or campaigns all send out that we want control of our lives, we want control of our future. And humans in general have this innate desire for control. But when I gave my wheel or gave that car to my Jesus, my yeah, it was more freeing, and he was driving the car, he was cruising, and I think that was when I could enjoy the scenery outside instead of worrying about the road ahead. Um, and then you could talk about how Jesus has done to rescue and reorient you towards God. So that's remembering what Jesus has done for you, remembering that first love when you encountered Jesus, and remembering how He loved you, I- and how you wanted to share that love and how you want to relate that to the next person. And then you can invite them to take a step towards Jesus, such as coming to this upcoming Saturday's Egg Tart event, hosted by E Team. We're the judges too, and there, egg prices are going up, so it's a great time to come and enjoy egg tarts. And or you could, bring them to Sunday service or pickleball or small group, and slowly just have that like space where you could share your story and share God's story, like the autobiography you guys were talking about. It would be awesome. You could share that to the world too. So the next tool we're gonna go over is telling God's story in mini. Oh, next slide, please. Oh, yep, yes, awesome. So why do we tell God's story in mini? Because God is huge, and His story can cover from the beginning of the Bible to the end. It could be, in all of our lives, and it could be overwhelming to tell such a big story of God, of such a big God, right? But We don't need to be overwhelmed because we can tell it in many parts, and it's to tell it in every day in our daily life. So first one is creation. Is designed the world for we are designed for good and how life was meant to be. So our yearning for a better world points to a reality that a better world once existed, and God is personal yet infinite. He created everything, including us, and His creation was designed for good. There was peace between us, God, and the world around us. Oof. But it's also in your worksheets. If you want to head into the middle of the table, there's a 2-page worksheet. And I think it'll have the notes for today. Second is fall. We're damaged by evil and everything that's wrong in this world. When we look around, we see evil and we see brokenness. We see injustice. We see also hopelessness sometimes. And when we turn away from God and placing ourselves above Him and others, evil damaged our relationship with God, others, and ourselves. So we seek things to replace God. Oh wait, that's the wrong slide. Cross, restored for better, and it's God's remedy. So as if Shakespeare was writing himself into one of his stories, God became one of us in the form of human in Jesus, and Jesus revealed what God is to the world. But when He died on the cross, Jesus gave His life for our evil, and it restored our relationship with God and became that bridge between us and God. And then as new creation, He will return and He will make all things new. Jesus' resurrection gave us new life and power to restore our lives and the evil around us. It also points to His promise and hope that one day God will bring complete justice, peace, and restoration to the world. So next we're going to go into an activity in the worksheet. So there's a dialogue there's two dialogues, one between two colleagues catching up after the weekend, and the other one is weighing the decision to become a parent. So within your tables, you can read the dialogue and then try to identify which of the creation, fall, cross, or new creation that is within the dialogue. And then you can write it down with the pen. And then we'll come back and talk about each dialogue, and how we can see God's story in each one. Take 8 minutes. Oh, I forgot I had this. Take this. Yeah. Stop using it.
slides. It's
Oh,
really
no,
not
it's
working.
okay. I don't really need it. It's okay, I think. Oh, but Cal might need it.
Yeah. We're
Okay. Wait. Thank you. Oh, 1 minute countdown. Great, great, great. Oh, awesome, awesome. So before we get to the answers, let's have some table share. We haven't heard from the green table.
Just like go through them.
Yeah, what did you? Which
Okay.
mini did you guys?
So just one of them. Or,
The first
okay.
conversation.
So for the first conversation, we saw that actually the cross was mentioned when, or I guess for creation we weren't sure, but potentially when Jerry says like it's focused on relationships and learning to forgive people who've hurt us, like establishing that relationships are meant to be a certain type of way, and And then B for the fall, Jerry mentions, Jerry mentions that he was mad at his brother for a long time. And Brent also mentions that his wife doesn't speak to her family at all anymore. So that's like the brokenness. And then for the cross, Jerry mentions he can only forgive when he realizes God has forgiven me. And for new creation, he said when Jerry says, but I think it can finally help us get to a better place. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. That was the first conversation, right? Yeah, I think so. For the second conversation, which mini did you identify?
I think we identified 3, maybe 4. So for creation. Oh, this is one about the decision to be a parent. Okay. So Alex mentions in the middle about how every child is made in God's image and has value and worth, and that is speaking back to creation. Then the fall, I think they're talking a lot about their friend Nate's issues with, it sounds like drug addiction or something. And so that's like a theme throughout. And then we saw the cross in the part about them saying, like, even though we're not worthy, like, God's in control. And I don't know, we were having a hard time finding the, like, new creation, but, like, I guess the part at the end where they're like, oh, like, I guess realizing that we can move forward despite our sin is, like, or I guess the part about, like, not feeling like you're disqualified from this. I mean, maybe that's the part about the new creation, but cool stories.
Thank you. Wait, that was great. You guys actually identified all 4, but you didn't. But it wasn't. You don't have to have all 4. I thought. For the first one, the 2 colleagues catching up after the weekend is that points to the cross. But of course, you can also see where creation, fall, and new creation comes into play in the dialogue too. And the story about forgiveness and that the cross is the ultimate forgiveness. Yeah, and it's 2 colleagues catching up after the weekend. You know, tomorrow is Monday, so you can catch up with your colleague, your coworker, your friends tomorrow, and maybe you'll have something. Maybe this dialogue will spark something in your conversation tomorrow, or we invite you to try that tomorrow. And then, yes. So, for me, myself too, I've also experienced the cross and restoration for the better. So I didn't get mad at my brother for scratching my car, my beautiful Kumo. He looks a little deformed on like one door side. I was very sad, but you know our treasures are in heaven, so I remembered, you know, I'm not gonna bring my car to heaven, and that, so it's okay. I think my relationship with my brother is more important, and that yeah, Jesus died for us, and that I'm thankful. But yeah, but it's like too. And then for the next one, Wayne, the decision to become a parent is actually a more harder or tougher conversation, and maybe not all of you will experience that yet, but it's possible that you will in the future, or maybe who knows, tomorrow maybe. And it's impossible to be perfect parents, and that humans are broken, but we're not waiting to be perfect, and that's the freeing part. So this dialogue touches upon creation and fall, but I could also see where other parts in the new creation, the cross, also can come in play, and that all humans are created in God's image, and human misery stems from putting things in place of God, and we are made to know and worship God, and that your mistake is not the end of God's story. So these are just tools, both the telling God's story and mini, and your story and telling God's story. And we could use these elements of the story in our conversations with our friends, coworker, family. And the same gospel is communicated, but it's communicated differently. And there's no one way of telling a story. And this exercise is just meant to give us a feel for how we can tell God's story and mini. Next, we'll give it up to Cal.
Thanks, Gina. So we've learned a lot of tools on how to evangelize. I think mostly within our individual lives, but I think this last tool, this final tool, we're gonna think of spaces and opportunities within our collective church that we can use these tools in. And what I have here is basically a Venn diagram of 4 different communities that represent us as a table, both inside and also outside of the church. So if I were to start from the very far right, basically the deep red circle where it says communion, that's basically a church. That's the people who have the deepest relationship with Jesus. So everyone here. And then branching out to the left, fellowship. That's basically spaces outside of the church, so like the small group, that also have a relationship, but they're committed to having church community. And then branching out to friendships. That is all the friendships we have outside of the church, right? So your college friends, your non-Christian friends. And then finally, the one we have to the left is acquaintances. So these are all the people that have the furthest relationship with God. These are people we might want to try to bring into the circle. And so why I kind of want to break this up is that basically everybody within our circle has some type of relationship with Jesus. You're either close to Jesus or you're far from Jesus. And I think it's important that we know where the people stand, so then we can better think of spaces and opportunities to share God with people. For the next slide. So I do want to highlight some challenges we might face within our church community and even, within outside our church community, that we can be very tempted to stay in just a church, right? We might think that God only works in table or small group to grow disciples, grow other people. And that getting people outside from the 2 smaller rings is the only goal, right? But I want to say that the reality is, next slide. All right, the next slide on your sheet is that God is actually active in all our communities. Hence why we have the cross there, right? That he's not just in the spaces of church or deep communion. We believe that he is seeking people in all spaces to join him. So we want to kind of rethink what discipleship is, that we're actually trying to invite people where they are, right? And to also take a step closer to Jesus. So this is a little bit of a harder tool. So I'm going to try to go as slow as I can to try to convey this image. So for our next slide. So what this is saying is that there's kind of twofold things. From the people from the outer rings, the acquaintances and the friends, yes, we want to get them a little bit closer to Jesus. And that sometimes might be, inviting them to a small group. But sometimes that's not the only way, right? There are multiple different ways that we can think of, multiple different spaces. So it's important that we try to invite people to take a step closer, but it's also important that we as a church go out there to our friends and acquaintances and share Jesus with them, to meet them where they're at. Because not everyone would be comfortable going to a small group, and not everyone really needs that in order to share Jesus. So it's kind of a 2-directional way. And the point is to really bring our community a step closer to Jesus, right? So sometimes we might need a space like a informal weekly dinner, right? That might be the best way that we could probably bring our friends maybe closer to Jesus. And sometimes it might be different. So I do want to share a little bit of a Bible story that this image was based on. So in Luke chapter 5, Jesus invites Levi, a tax collector, to come to eat dinner. And back in the day, right, as we know, tax collectors are the most unlikely people to kind of be a disciple of Jesus. But Jesus doesn't care, right? He invites Levi to come and eat. And during that dinner, there's a bunch of Pharisees that are saying, why do you invite sinners, right? Why do you dine with sinners? And Jesus says, it is not the healthy that need a doctor. It is not the righteous I call, it is the sinners. So I think this story is a reminder that we also as a church have to go out there and invite others to come to Jesus, right? We at one time were unlikely candidates. We were once sinners that someone shared the gospel with us, and now we are here. So why not us do the same thing as what Jesus did? So on your sheets, the next slide. So now that we kind of gotten the kind of image and the purpose of this tool, I do want us to answer kind of two questions on a sheet. One of them is, what are some spaces, opportunities for spiritual conversations that you can cultivate in the two rings? So again, that's the acquaintances and the friendships. And the next question is, how can we challenge those in the outermost rings to intentionally move out of the outer ring? So it's kind of a two-step process. So I actually have an example for us in the next slide, just to kind of give us a guide on how to do this. So if I were to kind of answer the first question, right? If I were to start with acquaintances, a space or an opportunity is maybe a frequent neighbor that I know, or maybe for me personally, it's a college friend that I talk to quite often, and we just hang out. And he's actually non-Christian, but I actually want to build a relationship with him. So that would be my opportunity to kind of get my college friend to become more of a friend. And maybe for the friendship space, maybe you do have friends who are maybe a little bit more interested in God, but you might not necessarily have space. So maybe an example of a space would be like a monthly dinner with friends or some type of recreational spaces. So I do want us to kind of think of this, and maybe I do think in the table that we already are creating these spaces already. We already have these spaces. So if you think that we already have these spaces, I do want you to write them down and kind of answer, how can this be an opportunity for spiritual conversation? Does that kind of make sense for the first one? All right. And then the next one. All right. So this one, similar to the first one, but not really. But it's, if I were to challenge some of us to go out, right? How do we challenge some of us? Maybe it's to also create a space outside where both non-Christians alike and Christians can build community. So the example I gave is the cleanups, right? The community cleanups. So although it is, technically in the table space, I would point that as a way to get out, because most of the times we're actually not in the table. We're actually going out and we're cleaning up the community. We're interacting with our neighbors, right? And it's a challenge for us to actually show God's love, to build relationships with our volunteers who, most of them are non-Christian, right? To show our faith. And the reason why I kind of want to hone on this is that, there is a statistic that, a typical Christian within 3 to 5 years will lose all their non-Christian friends. And I don't say that to guilt us. I do say that as a reality that, we become very complacent. We can become very comfortable that when we spend our time with other like-minded people, right, we then unintentionally choose to almost cut off our other friends. And so I think it's a reminder that just as Jesus invited Levi, the tax collector, that we need to constantly go out there, challenge ourselves to share God and to also meet people where they're at, build relationships, try to bring them closer, right? And so this, I think, is more like an encouragement to us to really how to go out. So I'm going to give us 6 minutes to kind of think of this, and then we'll go and kind of share. And again, these spaces don't have to be a one fit, one all, right? It could be, whatever you think is best for the church. So have at it. Okay, so let's come back. I actually do want to hear some answers, so I'm gonna start from probably the back. I don't think we've heard from this table. What color is? Oh, purple. That's my favorite color. Oh, nice. All right, who? Maybe the first question. What were some spaces or opportunities for spiritual conversation that you can cultivate in the outer two rings?
Yeah, so we talk about the different ministries that Table has been ongoing. For example, the sport ministry, the volleyball, pickleball ministry, and we also mentioned about the small groups that we'll be having very soon. As I think these are all good opportunities and ways for us to invite new friends or friends that we already have, and just to have spiritual conversation with. So these are all the opportunities that we have identified.
Very good, nice volleyball. Yay! All right, cool. Let's see. Maybe a second question. I'll take one more. Who hasn't gone? I think everyone's gone. All right, all right. I'll take this. I'll take this table. What did you write for the second question?
Although I didn't actually share just now, but I was thinking because because I work at university and but also in student ministry, I've worked in student ministry for a long time. I really feel student ministry really is a good place to bring the fellowship circle and the friendship circle, because I think students, especially international students, are really open just to look for friends, and like inviting them to a campus fellowship is not so it's not so big as it would be if you invite someone with a family and a job. It's like, oh, why do I want to go for that? But with students, they just join a million societies or clubs in their first year on campus. And so if you say, oh, come along for campus fellowship, it's just another thing to try out. And if you're friendly to them, they might even stay. So I think that's one popular example.
Perfect. I like that. All right, I'm not gonna call anyone else. Oh yeah, this table didn't share. Yes, please.
Something like the egg tart event this upcoming Saturday, I think is a great way to invite, our friends who likes baking or interested in baking or have that, inner talent that hasn't been opened yet. I think they're welcome to come and try baking egg tarts.
Perfect. Nice. All right, so I hope you all had fun with the this tool and also the previous two. So I know this is more like a church kind of collective way we can think of spaces, but this is also be applied individually. And I know it was mentioned that we do have sports ministry, there is student ministry, right? And I do want to kind of challenge us that when we do have volleyball, we do have, a student fellowship, those we could probably think of ways of, how can we kind of use the tools that we learn, right? How can we bring the 4-H's to listen in volleyball? How, and in the student ministries who, bring them a step closer to Jesus. It may not be Jesus, it could be a spiritual question, right? How can we meet them at where they're at in these spaces? And how do we, as a people, just go out with these spaces? So with that in mind, I will like to bring it over to Jacob to close out.
Yes, thank you, Cal. As we conclude this evangelism training, I want you guys to apply these tools we learned today to evangelize with those around us every day. Lean into the 4-H's and look for an opportunity to evangelize or even pray for our friends. I like you guys to think about what Jesus has rescued or reorient you toward God. It could be alcohol, it could be overwork, or any addiction. When evangelism, you have to remember that we aren't looking for a result, but for faithfulness. We want to encourage you guys to share and encourage each other through our evangelism story. We'll be taking a break from these evangelism training for an unforeseeable future. Finally, I want to close off with note that the table main group chat will be open to hear everyone's evangelism story. Thank you.
All right, that's it for service. Thank you all for coming. We will have the we'll have the potluck right after this, and then we'll have the informational meeting. So feel free to stick around if you can. Yeah, we'll have the games first. Yes, right. It's at 12:30. Okay. Yes. So in 8 minutes. So we do. Oh, yeah. So stick around if you can, and that's it for service. Yeah. Oh yeah, we can. I think. What do we need for the games? Just 2 tables. We need 2 tables. Okay, so we still need the tables here though. Yeah, we could put away all the tables.